On the morning of August 12, 1837, Esther Hale stood before a small mirror in her parlor, humming softly as she pinned her veil into place. Her hands trembled not from nerves but from joy. Today was the day she had dreamed of. The little house in Sprucevale was alive with hope. Vines and wildflowers she'd gathered herself curled around the windows and banister, and a simple wedding cake rested in the kitchen, carefully covered with cheesecloth to keep the flies away. She wore her white dress with pride, smoothing the fabric over her waist as the clock in the next room struck 10. The guests had gathered, the parson stood ready, and her heart fluttered at every sound of wheels on the gravel road. But the groom never came. By 10:30, worried glances passed among the guests. Whispers filled the silence. At noon, the parson quietly closed his book. By 12:30, the wagons rolled away one by one down the quiet canal road. Esther sent a rider to the cabin of the man she loved, but he returned with a solemn face. Place was empty. Cold ashes sat in the stove. The groom was gone. And so in that moment, Esther Hale's forever was broken, and her story, one of sorrow, silence, and shadows, had just begun. Esther's friends hovered near her, unsure of what to say, how to help. The joy that had lit her eyes that very morning was now gone, extinguished in a matter of hours. She sat motionless in her wedding dress, her veil slipping to one side, her hands clenched in her lap as if holding on to something that had already slipped away. They gently urged her to rest, to lie down, to eat, anything, but she only shook her head, silent except for the quiet stream of tears that traced down her pale cheeks. Her eyes never left the road outside, as though she still believed he might come riding up with an apology, an explanation, something. So they left her there, by the parlor window, sitting in the half-light of a day that should have been the brightest of her life. When they returned the next morning, the house was eerily still. Curtains had been drawn tight, heavy and dark, as if morning had settled into the very wood of the house. From that day on, not a single ray of sunlight was allowed through those windows. And for the rest of Esther Hale's life, the light never returned, neither to the house nor to her eyes. All that summer, Esther drifted through the house like a wraith, her bare feet whispering across floorboards that once echoed with laughter and plans for the future. The home that had been lovingly prepared for a celebration now stood still and rotting, suspended in a moment that would never come. In the kitchen, the once proud wedding cake had collapsed into itself. The white icing, now crusted and yellowing, cracked like old plaster. Beetles burrowed deep into its sponge, leaving tiny holes and trails of decay. The scent of sugar had long turned sour. Parlor, where guests had once gathered in polite anticipation, was cloaked in cobwebs. The wildflowers Esther had so carefully arranged wilted in their vases, their color drained and petals curling in on themselves. Spiders spun silky veils across the table and the chair where Esther had waited, an eerie mimic of the lace she still wore. Her friends, hearts aching, returned now and then to care for her. They brought her warm broth, coaxed her gently to eat, offered fresh clothes. But every time they approached the wedding decorations or tried to remove her tattered gown, Esther erupted, not in sobs but in fury. She screeched like something feral, slashing at them with clawed hands and wild eyes. Her grief had turned to madness, and her dress, her veil, her rotting home, they were all she had left of him. Eventually, even her most loyal companions stopped coming. They couldn't reach the girl they once knew. Esther Hale was alone, with her silence, her sorrow, and the ruins of a wedding day that had never come. Broken hearts don't stop beating all at once, they fade quietly. Esther's didn't break with a scream, but with a long, aching silence that stretched through autumn and into the deep stillness of winter. By December, the little house in Sprucevale looked more like a forgotten tomb than a home. The vines that once framed the doorway now hung dry and brittle, scratching against the wood in the cold wind. One morning, a neighbor walking past noticed the front door swaying open, creaking softly as it caught the gusts rolling in from the creek. It wasn't just open, it had been open for some time, banging gently back and forth like a slow, sorrowful heartbeat. Worried, He alerted the sheriff, who gathered a small group of men and the town doctor. Together, they stepped cautiously into the house. What greeted them was not just abandonment, it was grief made physical. Snow had drifted through the open door, blanketing the floor, the stairs, the table still covered in dried flower stems and long dead vines. The house was silent, save for the low whistle of wind slipping through broken panes. Every room was coated in frost and shadow, untouched since the day Esther's heart was shattered. To the men, it was a haunting scene. But to the ghost of Esther, if she lingered then, as many believe she does now, it was the final witness to her slow unraveling. She watched as strangers stepped into the world she'd refused to leave behind, watched as they crossed the threshold she never did again, and felt the bitter chill of the snow that now claimed the only place she had ever loved. The house no longer breathed with life. It whispered only of what had been lost. They found her in the parlor, the room that had once held laughter, flowers, and the promise of a future. Now it was dim and still, filled only with the hush of drifting snow and the distant groan of wind through the broken chimney. Esther was slumped over the windowsill, her back curved like a question left unanswered. Her wedding veil, tattered and gray with dust, hung over her face like a mourning shroud, swayed slightly in the cold air that crept through the cracks in the glass. The sheriff stood frozen in the doorway, his breath visible in the icy gloom. One of the men raised a lantern, the flickering light casting long shadows across the warped floorboards. The doctor stepped forward, gently, as if afraid to disturb something sacred or already broken beyond repair. With shaking fingers, he reached out and lifted the lace. What lay beneath made even the toughest of them recoil. Esther's face, once so full of light and anticipation, was hollow now, drawn and lifeless, framed by brittle strands of hair that still clung to her scalp. The veil had fused to her skin in places, worn thin by weeks of decay. Yet despite the horror, there was still something fragile, something heartbreakingly human, in the way her hands were folded, still cradling the window ledge, as if she had spent her last moments waiting, watching, hoping. No one spoke. The lantern lowered. The lace was drawn gently back over her face. She was buried just as they had found her, wrapped in the remains of her wedding day, as if removing it would be robbing her of the only thing she had left. No one questioned it. They laid her to rest in silence, with more reverence than words could offer. And yet, some say she never truly left. But death did not silence Esther Hale. Long after she was buried in her decaying wedding gown, whispers about her began to rise like mist off Beaver Creek. The townspeople said they still saw her, a pale figure draped in tattered lace, wandering the narrow bridge near the old canal locks, her veil fluttering in the wind as she searched for the man who never came. Every year on August 12th, the air in the valley grows colder, as if the land remembers. Locals swear that if you stand quietly on the bridge near dusk, you'll hear the rustle of silk, the soft sob of a woman weeping, or the distant echo of a wedding hymn that was never played. Some have claimed to see her, a ghastly bride, her skin ashen, her eyes hollow, her white gown shredded and stained with time. They say she looks toward you with a sorrow so deep it feels like it could drag your soul into the water below. And if she touches you, if her hand grazes your skin, she becomes young again, radiant, glowing, beautiful. And you die in her place. These stories have outlived the town itself. Sprucevale is gone now, faded from the map like Esther's hopes on that long-ago summer morning. All that remains are the ruins of Hambleton's Mill, a crumbling building and two moss-covered canal locks, quiet sentinels of a forgotten past. Yet the legend endures. Campers, hikers, and ghost hunters still visit Beaver Creek State Park, drawn by the eerie beauty of the place and the haunting story of the bride who waits. They leave flowers on the bridge. They dare one another to walk alone after sunset. And some swear they return with a cold chill clinging to them, or the faint scent of decayed roses in the air. Esther Hale may be gone, but her heartbreak lingers, etched into the stones, the water, and the wind.
She waited by the river, never could believe. Oh, Esther Hale still wonders the veil in her bridal gown, torn and pale. Her groom long gone, her tears still flow, a haunting tale the winds all know. The clock struck 12, the night stood still. The vows she dreamed now bitter chill. Each step she takes, the shadows weep. Her broken soul a wound too deep. Oh, Esther Hale still wonders the veil in her bridal gown, torn and pale. Her groom long gone, her tears still flow, a haunting tale the winds all know. The village whispers her name with fear. The rustling leaves, her voice you hear. In moonlit mist she walks alone, a bride of sorrow calm.